title this TR and Taft Part 2. TR and Taft Part 2. Where we left, we're talking about Teddy Roosevelt. We're talking about how he was a trust buster. He went after the monopolies that existed in our country at the time, which made a huge difference for the everyday people. He would actually file 42 antitrust lawsuits during this time, and he'll earn the nickname the Trust Buster. Okay, and he went after the big dogs, including J.P. Morgan, Standard Oil, the American tobacco companies. So some of the biggest companies in the world at this time, he is not afraid and goes right after them. He believed in a square deal. And that's going to be one of his calling cards as president, a square deal. Every man should get a square deal. Okay, he brought in this period of reform to address that issue, to address that every man should get a fair deal during this time, and that's why this is called the Progressive Era. Okay, he believed that everybody should have a right to get a square deal. And we'll see this in how he conducts himself during this time period. A great example is the coal miners' strike in 1902 in Pennsylvania. Okay, the mines were owned by the railroads, and the miners lived in company homes and bought them from company stores. Okay, they worked long hours, and then they go home and they live in those company-owned homes. They had to go shopping in the company-owned stores. So basically, they're giving their money back to the companies. There were 150,000 miners made up the United Mine Workers Union. So 150,000 miners in the United Mine Workers Union. Okay, what they wanted, simply put, and I'll make this as simple as I can, 9-hour workday, a 9-hour workday, a 20% wage increase, and to improve working conditions, and of course the right to bargain as a union, or collective bargaining, which we've already talked about. The coal operators, led by George Baer, B-A-E-R, refused to compromise. Okay, they refused to address these issues. They refused to answer the requests of the miners. Teddy Roosevelt goes on a speaking tour of the Midwest and New England and tries to bring the two sides together. Excuse me. The tour's cut short when his carriage is struck by a trolley. So TR actually gets injured and his horse carriage gets hit by a trolley. Don't ask me how that happened. He's actually in a wheelchair for a couple weeks, and during this time, while he's in his wheelchair, the coal miners go on strike. The price for a ton of coal goes up from $5 to $30. And at this time, this is right before winter. And back then, you got to remember, put yourself back during this time period, our furnaces that heated our homes and things like that, our workplaces, this was all with coal. Okay, you have the coal trucks come in and shovel coal into your basements, and that's what would heat your houses. If you live in an older home, if you look, you'll see there's like a little trap door in your basement. That's called the coal room, and they would shovel that coal in. I used to have a house that had that. Excuse me. So mine owners demanded federal troops to break the strike because this is turning into becoming a national issue. So the mine owners demanded federal troops come in and break the strike, and in actuality, that's what happened in the past. Okay, TR gets both sides together and threatens to call in the army, and not to break up the strike, but to run the mines. And he summoned the leaders of the White House in a meeting, and the owners refused to cooperate. So TR gets furious and threatens to take over the mine with his soldiers. The owners finally agree to arbitration. Okay, so they agree to meet together and have a third party. It's like having a referee or an umpire decide what's going on, an independent party. And the results of this, the workers get a 9-hour day, so they did get one of their things there. It was a 10-hour day. They get a 10% wage increase. The arbitrator does not grant official recognition of the union, but he doesn't say you can't do it either. So they don't get the right to negotiate, but obviously with the miners going on strike in that big of a number, I would say that they're going to have some power. And more importantly, this is the first time the federal government protected the rights of all people involved. The first time the federal government protected the rights of all people involved. Once again, the square deal. Okay? TR believed that both sides got a square deal, and that term stuck, and you'll see it in newspapers, and that's where we get that from. Now, conservation. Okay? This is something that our country really hasn't talked about at this point. Okay, in 1901, there were basically no conservation laws. The industrialization was going crazy in America, and this is probably the first time that we needed something like this. By 1900, only 200 million acres of the 800 million original acres in our country were still standing. Okay, 4/5 of this is privately owned. And there's nothing wrong with this land being privately owned. The problem is, because it's privately owned, people could do whatever they wanted with it. Okay? And if you're trying to conserve that land, that becomes a problem. But now you have the issue of whose rights is it? Can the government take the land and things like that if you're trying to conserve it? So now you got some issues with the Constitution as well. So here are some early attempts. In 1887, the Forest Bureau was created in the Department of Agriculture. In 1891, it empowered presidents at this point, Harrison, to withdraw timberlands from public sales, meaning they're not going to sell any more timberland to private citizens. In 1903, TR vetoed a bill that would have given private interests the right to build a dam and an electric plant at Muscle Shoals in Alabama. Okay, basically, once again, we were trying to keep the private citizens from buying this natural timberland, and in this case, this dam would definitely alter the natural lands that were in this area. So, with the support of the Forest Bureau, okay, and at this point, the guy in charge of the Forest Bureau was Gifford Pinchot. Okay, with this support, TR withdrew 150 million acres of land from public sale. And because of this, many wildlife sanctuaries would be created. Okay, Roosevelt does this by executive order. So he basically does this by presidential order, which keeps the Congress out of it, which will eventually lead to the legality of this. Is this legal? Is he allowed to do this? I mean, he's basically telling, and you got to remember, 150 million acres. A lot of that is owned by private citizens, and now they can't sell their own land. So now, what happens there? How is that legal? Basically, what he's saying is you can't sell it to private citizens, but you can definitely sell it to the government, and the government will pay you. That goes back to that issue that we talked about with the government taking over your property. It technically can, but they have to compensate you for that in a very fair manner. And like I told you guys earlier, that usually happens in a very fair manner, just because they don't want to deal with it. The Newlands Reclamation Act, sponsored by Francis Newland, who was a Democrat from Nevada, This became a law in 1902, and basically it said money from land sales in 16 western states would be used to build irrigation projects to create farmlands. Okay? Now you got to think, in Nevada, what is in Nevada? Most famous city in Nevada? Las Vegas, baby. All right? And if you've ever been there, what's around Las Vegas? Desert, desert, and desert. So, by using this, the Newlands Reclamation Act, if you could use this money to build irrigation projects, that means people would be less likely to tear down the forest to have farms. So you can actually, let's create farmland in these desert areas or semi-desert areas, and we have to have water to do that, so that's where the irrigation projects come from. So that's a big step. There's a White House conference in 1908. TR invited many people to the conference about natural resources. Okay, basically the results of this is a 50-man National Conservation Committee is created, and it is headed by Gifford Pinchot, to report on the resources, to report on what's going on, the conservation efforts and things like that. So we actually have a committee that is there, a National Conservation Committee headed by Gifford Pinchot to report on these resources. So, you know, TR loved nature. When he spent his years out west, he wanted to preserve that for others to see. So we will start to see a lot of these national parks such as Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, will be preserved, okay? Because TR truly believed that he wanted those parks around for others to see, his grandchildren, his grandchildren's children, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we have no right to rob future generations of this land. So that is what he truly, truly believed. There it is. Now, his foreign policy. We know that TR was an imperialist. Okay, we know what he wanted to do. Go back to what he believed with Mahan's book and building a large navy, and was even hoping that we'd go to war so we would build this navy. So he is going to do that. He's going to build what's called the Great White Fleet. Here's a picture of the Great White Fleet, okay, because the boats were white. To show the world the American naval might, he's going to take this navy, not him personally, but he's going to take this navy on a personal, not a personal, but basically a world cruise, and he's going to park it in ports all over the world just to show off our might. Okay, and that goes back to his belief of showing off our military. Speak softly, carry a big stick. That's a good way to describe him. Okay, in 1905, Russia and Japan go to war, and Russia will actually lose to Japan in this war in 1905. But TR will actually get Russia and Japan to end this war, and will help negotiate the peace. Okay, because of this, and this is kind of funny, kind of ironic, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, and here is the political cartoon. Here he is grabbing Russia's ear and Japan's ear, bringing them together. You know, once again, look at the symbolism there. But here is one of our biggest warmongers. And I don't say that in a mean way. I'm just saying that he, as we said, wanted a war with Spain, was building a huge military so we could perhaps spread our empire even more. And he wins the Nobel Peace Prize in 1906 for ending the war and getting them to sign a peace treaty. So, he will then start building the Panama Canal in 1904. He started the task of building the Panama Canal, which will connect Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Very important to us even today. It took about 43,000 workers, cost $400 million. The French started it, but they weren't doing a very good job, so we just kind of waltz in there and take over. we will actually give it back to Panama in 1999. Okay, so but with the promise, because it's so strategic, you screw this up, we're coming in. During the construction, 5,600 people died just in the construction, mostly of the malaria, or also called yellow fever. Yellow fever, which we talked about, actually took more people in the Spanish-American War than the battles did. Okay? And so now we have access, with the construction of the Panama Canal, we will have access to both oceans. And he could really carry off his speak softly and carry a big stick. The big stick will be our Navy or our military. Very important that you understand that. As far as the Nobel Peace Prize, going back to that, there's actually been 4 presidents to win the Nobel Peace Prize. He will be the first. We got Teddy Roosevelt in 1906, Woodrow Wilson in 1914. We'll get to that. Jimmy Carter in 2002, and President Barack Obama in 2009. All right, that's it, guys. Stay classy, Vandalia.